Hey guys, I hope you're doing great today, and I can't wait to bring you the show. But before I do, I just want to make a quick request. If you're listening to the show and you're getting good value and you're enjoying the content and you feel that it's valuable, if you could just take a second and go and give me a rating and review in whatever platform you listen, whether it be Apple or Google or Spotify, whatever it is, just go and give me a rating and review. That would be very appreciated. All right, guys, let's dive in.
People are used to like a corporate environment where you're kind of coy about, what you make or like what you're doing. But when you go to these business focused meetups, you kind of want to humble brag a little bit, but not, obviously you don't want to be obnoxious about it.
You're listening to the Just Start Real Estate Podcast. If you're serious about your real estate investing business and need real answers, you are in the right place. And now, your host, Mike Simmons.
Okay, guys, thank you for joining me on the show today. I appreciate it. I have a great interview for you, interviewing a really successful real estate investor, someone who beat the 9-to-5 grind, was an engineer turned real estate investor, and we get to hear all about that, how he did it, how he got his deals funded, how he manages his rentals, where he's finding his deals now. Just some cool information and a really good interview that I think will resonate with a lot of people out there that are trying to figure out if they want to quit their full-time job and how that might look and how you make that transition. So I'm super stoked to have Mike DeHaan on the show today. Like I said, he is an electrical engineer turned real estate investor, founder of INW Properties LLC. He owns 28 doors and has completed 48 deals in 3 years of investing. And we actually found out it was more like 34 doors at this point and somewhere in the 50s with deals. So, and he's now generating more passive rental income than he used to make with his 9-to-5 six-figure salary. So he has been featured on many podcasts and publications, and he is actually launching his own podcast, and that is going to be called, or is called, the No BS Real Estate Show. So go and check that out. Guys, I give you, without any further ado, Mike DeHaan. All right, Mike, thank you for being on the show. I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. It's good to meet you. I've listened to you for quite a while and excited to chat with you a little bit.
Cool. Me too. Same here. We're kindred spirits in how you do your real estate and the kind of real estate you do. And the research that I've done, it sounds like we have some similar philosophies on real estate. So it'll be a lot of fun to talk about that and dive in a little bit deeper. But before we do that, let's just for a minute, it's a little bit, obligatory is maybe the wrong word. It sounds like a drag, but let's let people in a little bit on who you are. If they don't know who you are, if they've never heard of you, let's just give them a little bit of background so they can maybe understand who they're talking to.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm an investor up in Spokane, Washington, and Northern Idaho area predominantly. We have a wholesaling, flipping, and rental business up here. I started my career, I guess I started my adulthood as an engineer by degree, and then, kind of decided that I didn't like that career path after 5 years of doing that. So it's funny. I feel like that's kind of a common story. There's a lot of engineers out there who get into the real estate world. So decided I didn't like that. So I jumped ship after 5 years with no real plan and just sort of decided I was going to figure out what to do with myself. After a little bit of wandering around, I ended up kind of dabbling in real estate. Not really 2 feet in at the start. I was doing some other stuff, trying to get into the tech world. So I was doing real estate on the side, trying to get some supplementary income going. And then as, the tech world turned out to be so, I guess, difficult, especially with where I was located, I started getting more and more into real estate. In the first year, I bought 3 rentals, using primarily funds that were from my previous corporate IRA and 401k. Mm-hmm. That was 2018. 2019, I started flipping some houses on by myself, working with realtors to find stuff on market and buying stuff from wholesalers. End of 2019, I had a couple more. I had a triplex and 1 more rental. And then going into 2019, it was getting hard to find deals. So I joined up with my now business partner, who's also my best friend from college, to start our business. Since then, we started officially beginning in 2020. And now we own 34 units, and we've done about 50 transactions in the last, year. So sort of has escalated there pretty quickly as we started working direct to seller. So
It's even, you've escalated beyond your bio numbers. You have to update those. It only has you at 10 stores. So yeah.
Oh, really?
That's cool though. So I have a couple quick questions about what you just shared. So the units that you own, the 34 doors, is that owned jointly between, like in your company with you and your partner, that the company owns that and you guys own it equally?
So there's a couple that, I guess quite a few that we do. So yeah, I guess we own, 9 properties split now, but then me and my wife, we own, 12 doors, just us, that we accumulated before we started working with my partner.
Okay, cool. Where did you get I know where you got the funding to do your first couple of rentals. You got that from your W-2 job. Where did you get the money to start flipping? You were buying from wholesalers, it sounds like, and maybe the MLS. I don't know, but where did you get the money for the flips?
Yeah, it's partnerships. From right when I started, I really got involved in the local investor community. And, that's kind of how we've been able to grow very quickly as well.
Okay.
Your network is your net worth sort of thing, right? I've been a big believer in that. So when I started flipping houses, I basically met somebody that had the cash, and didn't have the time, and I had the time and I had the hustle. So I facilitated the projects and they basically supported me, and then we would just split the profits 50-50.
What was the conversation like when you approached them to fund these deals and partner with you?
So I was actually fortunate. They actually approached me.
Oh,
because they known that I had done some, rehabs on my own stuff that I had bought. There were a couple of rentals that we bought. There was some fixers, not like major fixers, but basic stuff that we were doing. And they'd seen how I'd stabilized them. And the person that I worked with, they were looking to get started flipping houses, but they knew nothing about doing any work and didn't really want to get into that world.
Yep.
So basically, they were, it was a couple actually that was based in a different part of the state. They had a relatively successful business and they wanted to flip some houses, but they didn't want to, have to get their hands dirty. And then, we just sort of had connected a few times, and then they brought it up and, sort of went from there.
All right. So there's a huge lesson in here and I want to underscore it for a minute. So you said they approached you because they knew that you had done some flips and some renovations. How did they know that?
Yeah, just, casual conversation that comes up at these meetups.
Yeah.
If anybody ever goes to a real estate meetup, it's funny. I feel like, people are used to like a corporate environment where you're kind of coy about, what you make or like what you're doing. But when you go to these business focused meetups, you kind of want to humble brag a little bit, but not, obviously you don't want to be obnoxious about it.
But the really important lesson here is, and I'm the reason I'm kind of driving this home so hard is, I think at a surface level, there's two things that you did really, really well to find this money that came to you. Is you showed up where people like that hang out and you talked about what you were doing, right? So when people say to me, oh, I can't find money, there's private investors, I haven't done a lot of deals, they won't work with me. Baloney. Show up and talk about what you do. Show up and talk what you do. Keep doing that, rinse and repeat, and you will make these connections. There are people are out there with money that want to work with folks, and it isn't always the person with the most experience and the biggest resume. It really isn't. It's a people business. So people who resonate with you may just resonate with you, and they don't resonate with the guy who's done 100 flips. They kind of more identify with you and they want to work with you. So I got my first private lender before I finished my first flip because I showed up and I talked about what I was doing, and the rest kind of just worked itself out. So that's awesome. And we're spending a lot of time on this, but I think it's such an important message for people who are just like, I don't know where to find money. Nobody who has money I know. Just get out there and start talking. Put yourself out there. Make sure people know what you're up to. Awesome.
Yeah, and I think too, Mike, really quick on that. I think a big thing that a lot of people don't understand is after you have those conversations with people, you have to be proactive after the fact, because everyone goes out, and I think every guy, especially, you go out with your guy friends. You're like, I have this business idea. Maybe you've had a couple beers. And you're like, that sounds so awesome. Let's do it. And then nothing ever comes from it, right?
Yeah.
So, and the same things happens at these meetups. There's so many folk partnerships that start up and they're like, yeah, let's work together. And then no one actually takes any action after that moment.
Yeah.
So after I met with these people and they kind of expressed interest, like later that week, I was like, hey, I'm getting these emails from these wholesalers. Let's look at these properties. And then once I sort of engaged that way with them, they started doing that back with me. And next thing you know, we're actively discussing deals. We're looking at different opportunities. And once you're really diving in the numbers, somebody like that, you're kind of in bed with them at that point, and chances of it coming together is 10x more than just having a conversation at a meetup.
Totally. Yep. Absolutely. Collecting business cards and just kind of shaking hands and then going home and doing nothing is kind of a big waste of time. Honestly, you got to follow up for sure. Everything is follow up, right? Those kind of relationships, leads, everything is about follow up. That's just where it's at. So once you did these few flips, I think now if I'm reading correctly and kind of understanding where you are, you're doing more, you're holding on to stuff that you want to keep long term, and everything else you're wholesaling. How many flips are you actually involved in? Have you kind of phased out that part, or is it real like specific ones you'll flip?
Yeah. So we actually do quite a few flips now. Okay. We're just kind of selective about the flips that we do in the way that we don't want to do any like major projects. Mm-hmm. Just because it's more headaches, right? And we have opportunities that we don't have to be doing crazy, bump outs or massive gut jobs or things like that. So we'll do cosmetic flips, we'll do things where we like finish basements and add square footage and things like that. But we're not trying to do, rebuild like a foundation, or anything super crazy.
Now let me dial back for a minute and talk about your W-2 and when you left that job. Two things. And I guess if this is too personal, you can tell me to back off, but were you married when you made that decision?
I was, yeah.
Okay. What was that conversation like?
Yeah. So it's funny. The conversation with my wife was actually very easy, mostly because I was a miserable prick at the time. Like, she was like, if it's going to get you back to how you were before you had these awful jobs that you hated, because we've been together a really long time. Okay. My wife and I we're high school sweethearts. Okay. Cool. And I'm 30 now, so we've been together for like 13 years. Mm-hmm. And so she's sort of seen like the full gambit of my life. Okay. So with her, it was very easy. Honestly, the hardest conversation was with my parents. Oh, because awesome. They had, they were really big facilitators of me going to college. I went to like a great private school here in Spokane. I went to Gonzaga University. I got a pretty prestigious degree in electrical engineering, and they were very proud of that, especially my mom, who comes from an academic family. And then for me to call her up and say, hey, remember that thing that I did where, we spent all this money for me to go to school? It's like, yeah, I'm going to flush that down the toilet now. Did
they pay for your school? Did you pay for it? Some combination of that?
So I got a pretty good scholarship from Gonzaga for academics. So I had half of it paid for. Okay. And then my parents paid for the other half.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. I can imagine that would be a tough conversation. Yeah. I can totally get that. And honestly, family is tough. I say this all the time, and you tell me if your experience was similar, but your mom was bummed, obviously. She was very proud of you having your degree. But a lot of times, like, your family will sort of discourage these kind of moves because they're trying to protect you, right? They want the best for you, obviously, and they're trying to protect you. And so I think if you have a good relationship with your family, I mean, I left my corporate job closer to 40, and I still took my parents out to dinner to tell them the good news, and at 40, my dad was still like, bad idea, son, bad idea. And I was like, but I'm already making way more part-time doing real estate than I am in my W-2. And he's like, you're going to regret it. And it's like, okay, well, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was fortunate that my parents actually didn't really try to discourage me at all. Okay. They basically just encouraged me to really make sure that I was making the right decision and then not be impulsive. Because I guess at the time I was 27 when I made that decision. Okay. So, they were like, you're still young, you got time to figure it out. And my dad's entrepreneurial, so he kind of understood it more.
Gotcha.
But I know a lot of people that are not so fortunate to have that same sort of support.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what that was. Oh, really?
Okay. Now you're back. Okay. That was a really bad time to lose you too, because I said, hopefully you're not still a miserable prick. And then you go silent.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I'm definitely not now. I'm much happier than I was before. Good. I think that the entrepreneurial lifestyle just fits me a lot better, and then also too, once you kind of figure it out and you start making real money, it just sort of elevates your life in ways that you don't really understand until you're able to do that.
Totally. It can make you feel so much lighter. And especially if you start putting together a team and building out your business, and you have people in positions doing things that maybe aren't your strength or your superpower or things you hate or whatever. And you can start growing, and your business starts growing, and you're not doing every single thing in it. That's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So tell me how and I know we talked prior to jumping on here live, you're starting a new podcast called the No BS Real Estate Show. You guys, by the time this airs, I think you will have launched. So hopefully everyone can look that up, but go check it out. But the reason I'm bringing that up is I wanted to find out what are you currently doing to find deals? Because it sounds like from what I read, you're doing like 3 to 5 a month, somewhere in there. How are you finding deals? Because people are struggling to find deals right now. It's such a hot market. Everyone thinks they can sell for way more than their house is worth. Like, how are you guys finding these deals?
Yeah, sure. So it's funny. I feel people always ask that question. Locally here, they're always looking for like the magic secret. The thing that nobody else is doing. But honestly, we're just as vanilla as it gets. We focus on direct mail. Direct mail, we mix in some cold calling there as well. And the biggest thing is just being persistent. And we really push a local brand very heavily.
Okay.
Things that are really different. And they are, showing that we are actually true local people and we're not, just kind of like scammers out there. Right. Yeah. So if you look at like our website, a lot of our stuff, our face is on it, we have things connected to the local community. Just basically being consistent with our mailers, and it just keeps working over and over and over again, which, sometimes feels fascinating because it feels so primitive, but I mean, it works, and that's just been our cornerstone the entire time.
That makes sense. I tell people all the time, of all the very successful real estate investors that I know, I would say the vast majority, 80% of them, get the vast majority of their deals from direct mail. It just works. It just still works.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we've tried a couple other things like, we've done cold calling, but it's a different kind of lead, because it's more people that are willing to have a conversation because you caught them at the right time versus something like direct mail. They are reaching out to you and they're expressing motivation the second that they call you. Yeah. And then I know a lot of people get into the PPC and the internet stuff now, but I think that's kind of market dependent, so kind of where we're at, we have lots of older people, lots of blue collar people that don't necessarily do the internet game quite with the modern times. So it just doesn't seem to convert as well for us.
Yep, totally. Okay. Couple things I want to hit on real quick. I know that you negotiate both acquisitions and disposition stuff. What makes a good acquisitions person? For those people listening that are maybe a little bit more advanced and they're looking to bring someone on to help them talk to motivated sellers and get contracts, what do you look for in that position?
Yeah. So the biggest thing that we've looked for, people that we've hired, has been their ability to relate to people with all walks of life. So, I think that a lot of people, they think you need like a hard sales driver, which I think definitely helps. But, a lot of our sellers, they're older couples who are in tough situations. People are getting divorced. There's people that are in really sensitive financial situations. So you kind of need somebody that has that mix of people skills, that they're going to be very likable, while also having, the patience that a hard salesperson may not have, to be, listening to these people's stories and navigating the ins and outs of dealing with these people that have gotten themselves in a situation. That's something that we always talk about. We'll get some of these sellers that we're chatting with and they seem almost so irrational or they're so unput together. And, to most of us, that seems crazy, right? And you're like, well, I don't understand how they're so unorganized. And it's like, well, there's a reason that, they're $50,000 in debt and they're about to lose their house.
Totally. Now, what about dispositions? What do you look for in a dispositions person? Is it different or is it the same person?
So the dispositions person, we look for somebody that has a little bit more real estate knowledge and a little bit more of a ability to connect sort of business to business. Because, when we're doing dispositions, it's more, how can you connect and sell this deal to other investors who are also equally educated? Right. So, honestly, with that, we don't look as much for a salesperson, but more somebody that is willing to, take other investors out to coffee, while also being able to navigate some of the tricky things that come with closings. So our dispositions people do our transaction coordination as well. Okay. So they're, doing stuff like driving paperwork to the sellers, or they are, we've had help sellers move and things like that. So, more like a problem solver and less like a shoulder to cry on, right? That's what an acquisition person kind of is.
Totally. I agree with you. I don't think they're the same skill set. It's a different skill set for sure. Now, talk to me a little bit about landlording. You've been able to accumulate a sizable rental portfolio in a relatively short amount of time. Are you guys doing your own property management? Where do you stand on that?
For the most part, yeah. So the only ones that we don't manage ourselves, we own a few properties that are a decent distance from where we live. And so, I don't want to have to be driving out there like an hour to go fix something. Right. So we use property managers out there. But for the most part, we do all of it ourselves. And, we've kind of built a system to be able to manage that through just like the different softwares that are out there for doing property management. And then we have a virtual assistant that we leverage that helps us, answer maintenance calls and just do some of the random tasks that comes with it. Then right now, the only thing that we really have to do when it comes to boots on the ground property management is help place tenants. But even then, we're working on hiring an admin right now to help us do that whole process of doing walkthroughs and screenings and all that sort of stuff.
Gotcha. Can I ask what software you use?
So we use Hemlane right now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a simpler one. I know a lot of people use these. It's like Buildium, I think, is a pretty popular one. And this one we liked because you can add different features to it based on like how automated you want the property management to be. So they even have a service on there where you can pay extra and they actually have like a call center that people can call. Like, so when they call for maintenance, it goes to somebody and then you give them like a list of your contractors and they organize all of it.
Wow.
So we had that as like a backup in case, our VA goes south or like, they have she's over in the Philippines. Sometimes they have like weather and they're not reachable for like long periods of time. Yeah. So if we have an option to be able to connect tenants with that, that's a good little nugget. You said it was called Hemlane, H-E-M Lane? Yep. Hemlane.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I've never heard of them. Awesome. Any tips? What do people do wrong when it comes to rentals? Like, what are the biggest mistakes? What are some of the like lessons learned that you had when you were starting to build your portfolio?
Yeah, well, I think, there's always issues with tenants that people face, mainly being too nice, honestly. Like, I still struggle with this to this day when you get people that have weird family dramas and things like that, they'll quote unquote have, and they'll just share with you to try and, get discounts on rent or be late on rent. And most of the time you find out it's all BS anyway.
Yeah.
But that's one thing, but I think one of the biggest things that we've learned as we've sort of grown our portfolio and the rental market's been so competitive is honestly, you got to have like decent properties. There's so many landlords out there that like just think because it's a rental, the property doesn't need to be like decent.
Yeah.
And it's amazing if you have like a nice property. How much happier your tenants are and how much more willing they are to stay for like long periods of time. Mm-hmm. And also too, like how much more rent they're willing to pay. So many properties that we even buy are these landlord owned properties that just like basic stuff doesn't work.
Yeah.
And you're like, and the thing is we go in there and like to fix the entire house would cost like $3,000. And now the tenant's going to stay there forever because it's functional. They're happy, it's clean. Yeah. But for some reason, a lot of landlords just don't want to spend that money or take that time.
Totally couldn't agree more. When it comes to like, you mentioned like the drama and stuff like that. And what I sort of read between the lines was, don't get caught up in that drama. Don't like let your emotions or feeling bad for someone, like you got to have rules, you got to stick to them and you got to sort of hold firm with that. And that's what a lot of people pay property management companies for. Frankly, they know they'll get sucked into that stuff. And so they have to have somebody like arm's length that can just be a little bit more business-like about it. So I agree. If you're going to do it yourself, like don't let yourself get sucked into the drama and the excuses. You just can't do it. It's not a good way to run a business. And really, I'm of the opinion, I don't know how you feel about it. You're enabling people. You listen to their drama and you give them a break. Guess what? They're going to come back at you with soon. Similar drama and want another break, right? So you're kind of enabling some bad behavior.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much everyone, you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. Every single opportunity they get, and one day they're asking for rent to be late, like a couple of days. And then the next time they're asking like, oh, can I just pay 50% of it this month? And then it's like, oh, I'm going to be a month late on rent. Yeah. And it's just cascaded, and I made that mistake when I first started where I was super flexible with people. And one of the issues I had too, one of the first rentals I bought, the tenants were like my age. And like we had a lot of similar interests. So they kind of became my friends.
Yeah.
And then, all of a sudden you have somebody that's your friend and you need to, smack down on them a little bit because they're, they suddenly have like a dog that's terrorizing the other neighbors in this duplex.
Yeah.
It creates awkward conversations, and people think the conversations are awkward at the start. It's like, well, wait until you kind of have a personal connection, and now you got to do that, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yep, 100%, man, 100%. All right, listen, we could do this all day because I really enjoyed this conversation for sure. But let me direct people. You have a website that I know we want to direct people to. It's called MikeInvests.com. That's invest with an S, MikeInvests.com. Go check him out there. Guys, don't forget to go and check out, you're listening to podcasts, obviously your podcast listeners, go to the No BS Real Estate Show and check that out with him and his partner. They're going to be in the trench kind of conversations, like real world stuff, what's going on in their business. And I think it's fun sometimes to just be a fly on the wall, listen to two people running a business and talking about what's going on. So did I represent that properly? Is that what we're going to be hearing?
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things that we feel is kind of underrepresented in a lot of the real estate media that's out there. A lot of people go and they talk about like their wins, or they talk about, how they scaled their business so quickly, which is always great to hear. It's like, but, as you being in the business yourself, I'm sure you have, your horror stories of like, crazy things with tenants or sellers or closing processes or lenders or whatever. And so we're going to kind of focus on that a little bit more. Cause we've been to, so many like dinner parties and stuff like that. And like, oh, you're in real estate, tell me about it. And the next thing you know, you're telling them your stories about, the time you're walking through a property and the landlord and tenant got into a fist fight in front of you, or like, the time that you went and showed up at a property that you just bought and the seller didn't know how to cash a check, right? Well, it wasn't able to, he didn't have a bank account. So we had to drive him around for 8 hours trying to figure out how to cash $160,000 checks they can move on with their life. Just crazy stuff like that I don't think people that don't have these full-time businesses really understand.
Totally, man. Totally. I love it. Well, listen, thank you for being on here. Thanks for agreeing to do this. It was a lot of fun talking to you guys. Go check out MikeInvests.com. And Mike, man, future, nothing but success for you in the future, I hope. And I'll have you back on maybe in a short time and talk about kind of how you're doing then.
Right on. Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. And one more thing too, if you want to reach out to me, you can do so on my Instagram, just at Mike_invests. Just DM me on there. I'm always chatting with people and I love it. So
sweet.
Perfect.
And we'll have all those links in the show notes, guys. So we'll have the website, his Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, the new podcast. We'll have a link to that. So we'll have it all there for you. Don't worry. You can go and check that out after the fact if you're not able to write it down. And Mike, man, nothing but success for you, brother. Hope you do very well this year.
Right on. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks. All right. I hope you enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun for me. Nice little nugget there from the property management software. I know my property manager uses Buildium, and I honestly struggle with it. I think it's a little bit complicated for the basic, landlord if you're going to do your own stuff, which I don't have to use it. But that little tip that Mike dropped there about the software he used, we will throw that in the show notes so you guys have it. But fun interview. Really, I love talking to people who left their 9-to-5 and made it work and made it happen. Like he said, he was just being an entrepreneur suits him better than the 9-to-5. And that is true for a lot of us. And if that's you, it's time to do something about it. I'm not saying just go and quit your job cold turkey. Certainly if you have responsibilities and kids and all this stuff, right? But start planning your escape and make it happen. Nothing will happen if you just keep doing what you're doing, right? You'll just keep getting what you're getting. It's that old saying. So do something different today. Do something to change your life. Do something to change things for the better so that you can be the person that you want to be. All right, that's it for today, guys. Go out and make it happen.